request the chairpersons to adorn the Oration medallion to Dr. M.V. Pillai sir.
My esteemed professor, the icon of continuing medical education, Professor K.V. Krishnadas, Mrs. Mril Sukumaran. Although I didn't have the privilege to be born as her sister, Mrs. Vijayam Balaraman Nair and the family, Madam, could you please sit up for a clap? Stand up for a clap. Mrs. Tangam Achudamanon, wife of our former professor of orthopedics, who has established a gold medal in the name of our favorite professor. Distinguished members on the dais and in the audience. To an alumnus of a medical school, the biggest honor that can be bestowed upon him or her is not a national or international recognition. It's a recognition from his alma mater. I say this with all honesty because this was the auditorium where I sat for maybe 24 public examinations. And to be back on the stage, remembering the outstanding teachers, the doyens of academia, and pay homage to my most favorite friend, philosopher and guide, Professor M. Balaraman Nair, is a matter of extreme satisfaction, pride and honor bestowed on me in my life. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go to the proper talk, I want you to remember a famous, let me just, okay, go back. For whom the bell tolls is the caption of a famous novel. And I don't have to tell you who wrote it. But the novelist chose this title not as his own creation. He borrowed the title from a famous poet, and I will come to it very shortly. Memories of a Maestro in Pathology and Newer Insights into the Biological Clock is the title of my presentation. Dr. M. Balaraman Nair is probably known to you only through the medical colleges. But I know this great lover of humanity before he became a pathologist. 1961, I was a pre-university graduate. In those days, if you score high in pre-university, you can go for engineering, medicine, agriculture, whatever you want. I was totally confused. There were scholarships available in other branches of career. So I was sort of confused which career I should pick up. Dr. Babu Paul came to my house, enticing me to come to the engineering college, only to realize later that his interest in me was he was contesting the election as the college union chairman. One more candidate guarantees him another vote. That's the time I went to Bombay, and I met a young medico from Trivandrum Medical College, belonging to the first batch of the best medical colleges in the state, even today, Dr. M. Balaraman Nair, and my uncle took him to the Grand Medical College. He wanted me to talk to him before I make a decision on my career. I saw Dr. M. Balaraman Nair with blood spilled all over his garment, doing post-mortem on a traffic accident victim in Bombay Street. The 6 foot, 200 kilo man, he was splashing blood all over the body. and I was really scared. I was not sure whether I should go for this career. He wanted me to meet him in the evening and give me a sermon as to what are the various opportunities waiting for you in medical science. It was on his persuasion and enticement that I chose the medical career, and here I am before you as a humble alumnus of this institution. Balaraman sir is many things for many people, and I must say that if you happen to travel through Attingel Junction, there is a hotel called Doubloon, Doubleoon. The Doubloon stands for a hotel. The owner has named it in such a way because his father always used to order 2 servings of full lunch because he had such a voracious appetite every time he goes to a restaurant. You can see that Doubloon. Sometimes I used to wonder whether this Doubloon meant for me, because when I was a medical student, my mother used to send the lunch meal through a carrier from Pujapura, but invariably the lunch meal arrives late. And Mrs. Balaraman Nair, whom Balaraman sir used to call us Mani, could not wait until then. She insisted that I should have the lunch with the mini of Kabuliwala. I use the word very carefully, mini of Kabuliwala. Those of you who remember the story of Kabuliwala will remember. The Kabuliwala used to love the little mini. And there was a mini in Balaraman sir and Chechi's house, Tangam. Tangam was 4 or 5 years old. Tangam used to insist that she won't eat until I come from it, my anatomy lecture or physiology lecture. She was mini to me and I was the Kabuliwala. Years later when I came back, Tangam was about to get married. Suddenly it occurred to me that this is exactly the story of Kabuliwala. And the Kabuliwala was surprised to see that the mini is getting married, and I thought of my own mini back home. Tangam and Chechi, Vijay and Chechi used to insist that I should have my meal before the lunch carrier arrives to the apartment, to the quarters. And if my mother would be upset if I don't eat properly. So I made it particularly explicit that the lunch boxes are empty, so I had Doubloon. So for about 5 years, I had Doubloon, and that's probably the reason why all the adipocytes are still hanging around my body. Talking about Balaraman sir, you are familiar with the quotation that behind every successful man, there is a noble woman. Here is that noble woman, Vijay Chechi, who was more than an elder sister, almost like a mother to me. I give my respects to this amazing lady who has been so successful in raising 3 beautiful daughters, all well settled in life. This is the family photo of Balaraman sir. You can see Vijay Chechi, Tangam, Usha and Maya with all 3 sons-in-law, very highly placed in various professions. During the sunset years, you can see the golden years of Balaraman sir with the silk shirt and the silk clothes and the Nair and the wife behind him. This is entering the golden age of his life. By then, he had such a great reputation as a professor of pathology, perhaps the senior-most pathologist in the state, principal of 3 medical colleges, an unusual accomplishment, director of medical education, dean of the faculty of medicine, advisor to scores of advisory boards of the Kerala government, to such an extent that he's perhaps the only person who got a beautiful citation from the Kerala government in appreciation of his leading role in academia, health policy making, medical ethics, and overall healthcare funding. It's very few people can get such an honor from the government of Kerala. This probably is the last picture of Balaraman sir, who is almost like his commitment to work is unparalleled. Last picture in action, taken about 8 weeks before his demise. And that's basically where we are now. We are paying our homage with a floral tribute to this great friend, philosopher, and guide to the medical profession of the state. It's amazing to see how he became an assistant professor from Grand Medical College, associate professor, professor of pathology, then moving on to vice principal, principal of Trivandrum, Kottayam and Kozhikode medical colleges, dean of the faculty of medicine, and he has won scores of awards and distinctions. Talking about his family, I just want to highlight how blessed he is in having such a distinguished group of family members. Daughters, Thankam Trivishankar, Calicut. Trivishankar is a retired engineer. Usha Mohan, CEO of Nair's Hospital, Kollam. Dr. Mohan Nair is director of Nair's Hospital, Kollam. Maya Padmagumar, director of Atomic Energy, P&S, Chennai. Grandchildren has taken over the mantle from their grandpa. Dr. Balaraman Ravishankar is an orthopedic surgeon at St. James Hospital, Chalakudi. Dr. Madhu Ravishankar is a cardiothoracic surgeon, Mitra Hospital, Calicut. Dr. Sanjay Mohan, general surgeon, AIMS, Kochi. Dr. Siddharth Mohan, MD dermatologist at AIMS. The only granddaughter, Amrita Padmagumar, following the trail of excellence, is a third-year architecture student, right currently on a student exchange program, 6th semester in Detmold, Germany. Balaraman sir left us on 13th August 2017. 6 months after his demise, the Kerala's first and the best medical college is honoring him with a ceremonial lecture. It's a great honor for me because I thank Dr. Thomas Matthew, Dr. John Panikar, and Dr. Vasudevan Poti for giving me this honor. Very few people can claim such a long association with an esteemed senior colleague of mine dating back to 1961 to 2017. I just want to come back to the original quotation. For whom does the bell tolls? What the definition means, this quotation is from a sermon by the famous poet John Donne. Donne says that because we are all part of mankind, any person's death is a loss to all of us. Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind and therefore never sin to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. In between each strike of the clock, the poet wants you to think of the mankind as a whole. The 12 strikes, and between the strike, there's a calculated time of silence. That's the time of silence I would request you to remember Balaraman sir. May I request you to stand up and pay homage to Balaraman sir with each stroke of this clock. How do I remember such an elegant personality like Balaraman sir, an academician par excellence? Those of you who have watched his dramas, he's an outstanding actor. Had he been in the movie, many of the top superstars would have been out of business. He's an avid gardener, a voracious reader. He's a magician, above all, a humanitarian of amazing proportions. To remember him, I thought I would talk to you about the Nobel Prize of 2017, which epitomizes the concept that whether you are a flower, a plant, an insect, or a human being, we are all the same. Such a rich life he led that he was basically a naturalist, a humanist, and is a lover of every creation in this world. And it is exactly what we celebrated in October 2017 when the Nobel Committee announced the Nobel Prizes in Medicine. And here we go. Bible says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. That's a Christian thought of precious philosophy. In Islam also, the early morning symbolizes an opportunity to blend with the power supreme. What happens in the early morning? We know that the light from the rising sun hits a suprachiasmatic nucleus from the eyes. The rods and cones pick it up, and it takes taken through the optic nerve to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Here, the biologic clock is setting its rhythm. You are awake in the morning because the early morning sunrise has triggered a series of activities in your genes. We'll come to it very shortly. And it was this discovery that led to the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2017. Jeffrey Hall, born in New York, 1945. Michael Rochbach, Oklahoma City, born in 1944. Michael Young, born in Miami, 1949. Please have a look at their age. The Nobel Prize comes after years of hard work, perseverance, commitment, dedication. These people have been working on the circadian rhythm from 1970 onwards. So it took about 47 years for the Nobel Committee to realize the value of their work and honor them with the Nobel Prize in Medicine. And that's perseverance. If their idea was to gain the Nobel Prize, they would have long time ago abandoned their efforts. That's not what drove these distinguished scientists, and that's exactly what I would like the young medicos to know. The hard work will pay off. It may take time. It will never be neglected, never be ignored, and never be unattended. The concept of a biology clock was first seen by the soldiers of Alexander the Great. When they started invading the northwest, the first sign was the tamarind tree. The soldiers saw that the tamarind tree, with all these bright leaves and the fruit, can sleep at night. Tamarind tree leaves are sleeping at night, and these observations were made by soldiers of Alexander the Great. So what happens in the night? Why are these leaves going to sleep? What's the mechanism? Nobody knew this. 4th century BC. You can imagine how old this observation was. And then we know that the sunflower can follow the sun from morning till evening. A beautiful concept of Greek mythology, borrowed by our Jnanapidam winner G. Shankarakur, and again borrowed by poet Vayalar in Suryagandhi. Essentially, the Suryagandhi flower or the sunflower is following the sun. How does this happen? And today, the botanist scientists have an answer. There's an increased proliferative activity of the stem of the sunflower, turning it towards the east. And once it has followed the sun all the way to the west, the proliferation stops. And that's the biologic clock in sunflower. The fascinating thing is, these flowers are not shed in the evening. The sunflower can last 2 or 3 days. In the night, the sunflower turns to the west with the head hanging down, waiting for the sun to rise on the east horizon next day morning. And until then, it's in a sleepy mode. How beautiful to remember the lines of Vayalar, Suryagandhi, Sopranam Kanavadare, dreaming about the sun rising on the east until next day morning. Today, molecular biology has an answer for that. The 4 o'clock flower, we try to take the seeds from here to USA, hoping that the 4 o'clock would bloom at 4 o'clock in USA East Coast. Didn't do that. It has its own built-in biology clock. It blooms at 4 o'clock in Kerala. So that is something which taught me that the biology clock is not an indirect passive response to the environment, it is built in. What about Nishagandhi? It never blooms during daytime. Another biology clock in the flowers. And here's Kerala's trademark, Neelakurinji. Every 12 years, Neelakurinji is blooming on our Munnar hills. Why does it take 12 years for this flower to bloom? What's the biological explanation for that? I asked many botany scientists. The only reasonable answer I could find is this is actually a theory of natural selection. The seeds of Strobilanthus kuntiana or Neelakurinji are destroyed, virtually eaten away by jungle fowls. To counter this, the flower developed a survival tactic. They bloom in mass every 12 years, overpowering the jungle fowls. If they bloom sporadically 1 or 2, they would have been extinct from this planet by now. They bloom in masses every 12 years, and here we have the Munnar hills replenished with Strobilanthus kundiana. And here is the time-old icon of early morning, the rooster crowing. The rooster never crows in the afternoon. So, good night, sleep tight. What happens when you're ready to sleep? That's the concept of biology clock. The biology clock that works in your suprachiasmatic nucleus and also in many other parts and many other cells have their own intrinsic rhythm, not connected to the external environment. It optimizes physiology. This is why you feel like going to the toilet at 6 o'clock in the morning. Your hunger is at its peak during lunchtime. You're bright and alert in the morning, and you feel tired, exhausted, and lethargic towards the evening. Its existence was established in 1971 by two scientists, by Seymour Benzer and Ronald Kanopka. I have a story to tell you about them, at California Institute of Technology, making use of the Drosophila, the fruit fly. They discovered a gene called period, P-E-R-I-O-D. We'll come to it very shortly. This gene controls the circadian rhythm in your body. They discovered the mutants of a period gene which can abolish your circadian rhythm. You can be sleeping the whole day or you can remain awake. The Kumbhakarnan of Ramayana might have had a mutation of the period gene. That's the only explanation we can give for this Oracanthunia. Why did these scientists choose Drosophila melanogaster? Very simple. 65% of the genes in Drosophila melanogaster are the same as what you and I have. Principal Thomas Philip and Drosophila melanogaster differ only in about 35% of the genes. Can you imagine? Not only that, Drosophila can multiply in 24 to 36 hours. If you put a male and female Drosophila in a test tube, you can see the eggs have come out in 24 hours. So it is an easy task to study the genetic profile of the Drosophila. Almost all biology labs use this insect. In 1981, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young isolated and molecularly characterized this period gene. But the structure and sequence were not available. Just a word about the personality trait of these three Nobel laureates. When Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young won the Nobel Prize, all the leading newspapers in the world approached their peer group. What's your comment on these three eminent scientists? Here we go. The funny comment is, Jeffrey Hall is probably an eccentric because he works and works and works. He couldn't care anything about life. And that comment was quite appropriate. Jeffrey Hall donated the entire amount of money he got from Sweden for the Humane Society. And the Humane Society is like your SPCA, Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And this fund is being used for animals in distress. If an animal is in distress due to floods, cyclone, hurricane, tsunami, the fund will be used for them. And when asked, why did you donate the entire amount, he said, I'm 72 years old, I have lived my life, and I don't need an extra money to stay alive for the next few years. And he's a brilliant guy. Michael Rosbash is considered to be a workaholic. His colleagues describe him as someone who is going to die in his lab. And they say Michael Young from Rockefeller University is probably the normal scientist who fits into our concept. Now, the circadian rhythm cortex term, circa means around, dies means day. It's ancient. It was conserved through evolution. 24 our rhythm is generated through the rotation of Earth. There is something else going on. The entraining mechanism will link your circadian rhythm to external stimuli. This is why when I'm flying from Trivandrum to Texas, the entraining mechanism, the outside temperature, the outside sunlight, the outside humidity will converse with my inborn biological rhythm and ask me to stay alert. The jet lag is gone in 3-4 days. That is the entraining mechanism from outside. Some of the great discoveries in medicine came from basic common sense. One side, you can see that during one of the experiments, a French astronomer, Jean Myron, wanted to know what happens if you take this plant and keep it in a dark room. Will they change their biological rhythm when the sunlight hits them? He put them in a dark room and realized that regardless of what happens outside, the plant will open up its leaves when it is time outside. It doesn't have to see the sunlight. This was the first clue that the biologic rhythm or the circadian rhythm is from an inborn clock and not a passive response to outside. Isaac Newton said, I could make major inventions in life because I was standing on the shoulders of my predecessors. And you can see in 1729, a French astronomer makes this observation. And the scientists were running into that observation to prove what we know today about circadian rhythm. The leaf and flower movements of mimosa plant is what you saw now in 1729. They also found out that the circadian rhythm can be inherited through clock genes. The two types of genes will come to it very shortly. And Benzer and Konopka studies on mutant fruit flies confirm the presence of the period gene. The period gene is present in all of us. They are present in chromosome number 2. And what happens in the period gene is something we'll touch very, very shortly. Mapping experiments showed that if you knock down this period gene, it becomes an arrhythmic. Or if you can, that means you don't have a biological clock at that point. Your response to circadian rhythm is gone. You may be sleeping the whole day or you may be awake the whole 24 hours. If you make a mutation, it can make it a 19-hour day. You can make it longer with another mutation. All three are kept in the same gene on X chromosome in the fruit fly, but on chromosome 2 in human beings. And that's the period gene. They found the period gene. Why they were not considered for Nobel Prize? Because they just found the gene. Why this day and night change happens was not explained. And that happened with molecular cloning and sequencing by Michael Hall, Jeffrey Young and Rosbash in 1984. Again, see that. Their discovery was in 1984. It took about 30-40 years before they were considered for Nobel Prize. The transcription, translation, feedback loop. For those of you who are medical students, there could be an essay or write a short note on what is transcription, translation, feedback loop. This study was made possible when we had antibodies for per protein. When you write per in capital letters, it means a protein produced by the gene. If you write PER in small letters, it denotes the gene that produces the protein. Hall and Rosbash showed a 24-hour abundance of per protein in neurons in our suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus has about 20,000 cells there, genes there, sorry. And those genes are capable of responding to the body's demand. Most of the studies were done in fruit fly. The first thing that happens is the formation of messenger RNA. Right around late in the evening, when some of you are watching the serials in our movies, your chromosome number 4 triggers the messenger RNA. And that messenger RNA will start working as a period gene on chromosome number 2. And the messenger RNA will give a signal to the ribosomes in the cytoplasm to produce the protein, and that peaks later at night. If you allow this protein to accumulate in the brain, you probably would be sleeping the whole 24 hours. Something arrives in the scene early in the morning to knock down this protein. We'll come to it very shortly. And this is the picture I would like to highlight. The chromosome doesn't work. Anyway, this is you can see the ribosome is coming off the DNA. It has come to the cytoplasm. Now it has become the period protein in the ribosomes, and the body releases another gene-induced protein called timeless. The timeless protein and the period protein are buddies together. As long as they are together, the period gene cannot be destroyed. It moves into the nucleus, and there is a feedback inhibition. When they move into the nucleus, they knock down the gene activity. So that's why it's called a feedback. The period protein combines with the timeless protein, moving into the nucleus, knocking down the gene from producing more of period. So by maintaining this cyclic feedback mechanism during daytime, you can get the organism alert and active. The crypto gene is actually, as the word shows, crypto. Early in the morning, cryptochrome gene. It's a chrome gene which picks up the sunlight, and the cryptochrome will knock down the TIM or time gene. Once the cryptochrome gene activates its protein and creates the cryptochrome protein, the cryptochrome protein will bind with the timeless protein, and the timeless protein is destroyed. If timeless protein is gone, it cannot support the period protein anymore, and the period protein is destroyed. So early morning, the period protein is washed off, and you have all the activity remaining for the rest of the day. And that is the mechanism of this transcription, translation, feedback theory. It is this theory that won the Nobel Prize for the triumvirates. This autoregulatory feedback, the protein accumulation, will attenuate the period messenger RNA. The Young discovered the timeless gene and additional gene influencing circadian clock. Levels of timeless messenger RNA also cycle every 24 hours and became new paradigm of self-sustained circadian TTFL. The clock and cycle gene, mice experiments in 1998, and the gene products of clock and cycle protein interact with each other. We touched upon that. The cryptochrome binds to time, degrading it in presence. So basically, it starts with building up the period protein and then the timeless protein. They join together, and as long as they remain joined together, the period protein cannot be destroyed. To take away the period protein, early morning, the sunlight creates a cryptochrome protein, which binds to the timeless protein, and it takes away the timeless period companionship. And now, at that point, the period protein is amenable to destruction. That is how the cycle is maintained. Entrainment and synchronization is biological growth is through the central suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, here is what all doctors should know now. Today we know that in addition to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, there are biological clocks in our heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract, and also skeletal muscles. They are all independent. Although they are connected to the suprachiasmatic nucleus through humoral factors and autonomic system, they are all independent. So the Nobel Committee gave this example. It's almost like walking into a clock shop where you see a big clock hanging on the wall and tiny clocks set on the table. They're all independent, but their time is probably coordinated with the central clock. Peripheral clocks can be synchronized with suprachiasmatic nucleus and environment, feeding, temperature, physical activity. It controls the physiological output. It controls your gluconeogenesis, fat storage, hormones, and the relationship between central and peripheral clocks are active areas of current research in molecular biology. The circadian biology and human health is something which all of you should be quite keen to follow. The sleep can be totally out of whack if you manipulate the period gene. Your feeding can change. If your period gene is dysfunctional, you may not feel like eating in the morning or noon, and your appetite, your hunger, your craving, your satiety, all can change. The hormone release, your cortisol, adrenaline can vary if you tinker with the period gene. Temperature can vary. Local molecular clocks can regulate your cortisol, insulin, gluconeogenesis, and insulin sensitivity. This typically what happens in a typical day. Early morning at 6 o'clock, your cortisol release is beginning. The fastest increase in blood pressure, this is why we give the blood pressure medications in the morning between 6 and 12. You have the highest alertness until 12, and the best coordination. And you can see as time passes on, after 12, your reaction time becomes the fastest, highest body temperature, highest blood pressure, and the body releases melatonin, deep sleep, lowest body temperature, typical. Circadian dysfunction and sleep. If you disrupt the circadian rhythm, in other words, you don't sleep properly, you are entitled to become depressed. Many bipolar depression patients have their circadian dysfunction well documented now. Cognitive impairment, and you don't have to elaborate that. If you didn't sleep well, you don't perform in any skill which requires cognitive excellence. Memory disturbances, some neurodegenerative disorders, and advanced or delayed sleep-wake disorders. The advanced sleep phase disorder is something which all of us should keep in mind no matter which specialty you choose. Sleepiness beginning early in the life, early in the afternoon, and they suffer often by waking up early and are unable to get back to sleep. It's more common in older adults. It is less prevalent than delayed sleep syndrome, which we will come to very shortly. Delayed sleep phase disorder is strikingly different. These patients, the 24-hour cycle of sleep and wakefulness or your biological clock is significantly delayed. As a result, what happens is you go to sleep and you wake up much later than other people. For example, you may not get sleepy until 4 a.m., at which time you go to bed and sleep soundly until noon. Or at least you would if your daytime responsibilities didn't interfere. Delayed sleep phase disorder makes it difficult for you to keep normal hours, to make it to morning classes, get the kids to school on time, or keeping it to 9 to 5. An awareness of all these conditions would allow you to help your colleagues catch up a different schedule and be productive. Misalignment issues. Misalignment between lifestyle and circadian rhythm is classical. Two examples are jet lag and shift workers. Interestingly, there is increased risk for various cancers if there is misalignment between lifestyle and circadian. Neurodegenerative disorders are increasingly being traced to this misalignment. Metabolic syndrome, very common in Kerala. There is increasing concern that misalignment of lifestyle and circadian rhythm is an underlying phenomenon. Inflammations, role of melatonin. You know, the melatonin would allow you to sleep. Melatonin is also a cancer suppressor gene stimulant. So if you don't sleep well, And if your melatonin level is constantly below normal, then your tumor suppressor genes are sluggish. This is the latest article which came out in American Association for Cancer Research on 8th of January this year. The title of the paper is Female Night Shift Workers May Have Increased Risk for Common Cancers. Breast cancer, colorectal cancer, and some with gastric cancer, and the higher incidence in female night shift workers. Basically, a study on nurses working in night shift. This study is highly being questioned because the Chinese did a similar study. They could not show such a relationship. The critics argue that that's because the definition of night shift was different in European, American studies and Asian studies. But whatever it is, there's a mounting concern that shift workers may have a disturbed circadian rhythm which can pave the way for certain type of cancers. What about chemotherapy? Interesting. Many surgeons have told that if they operate on their patients early in the morning, the outcome is better. The wound healing is better, surgical outcome is better. Not confirmed yet by any prospective studies. The metastatic colorectal cancer, we found that if you give 5-fluorouracil at 4 p.m., the side effects are less. Oxaliplatin in the night, the side effects are less. The studies are going on to find out the appropriate time to give this chemotherapy with the least amount of side effects. Circadian variation of plasma 5-fluorouracil concentrations during a 24-hour constant rate infusion, and that was published in the American Journal for Cancer Research. Nocturnal disorders of clinical interest. I'm sure most of you remember Krishna sir and all, including Balaraman sir, used to teach us about paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. We never heard about a paroxysmal diurnal dyspnea. So what happens in the night to make you feel dyspneic? We know that most patients with pain will complain of more pain at night. And we used to explain that by explaining that the protective muscle spasm is gone, so the pain is aggravated. Migraine patients would say they have more migraine attacks at night. Asthma, notorious, asthma attacks are worse at night. Heart attack, if you go to the emergency room, most emergency room would say that the total number of heart attack patients coming to the emergency room casualty early in the morning. Heart failure, that's where the paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea comes. Interestingly, surgeons say that acute appendicitis patients end up in the hospital mostly at night. There's something working through the circadian rhythm, awaiting for further studies. Obesity and metabolic syndrome, an extremely important topic for Kerala. Obesity and metabolic syndrome in circadian clock mutant mice, published in Science. Now, Science and Nature are the most prestigious journals where the Nobel laureates publish their findings. It's a landmark study on the role of circadian rhythm, energy metabolism, and gastrointestinal hormone. In this context, I may say that the use of iPhones and mobile phones late in the night, WhatsApping, texting, watching the news, nobody has looked into how much it's going to affect your suprachiasmatic nucleus, how much disturbance it causes in your biological clock and circadian rhythm, and what effect it will have on your metabolic syndrome. So in summary, 2017 Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young for discoveries of molecular mechanisms that control the circadian rhythm. The central and peripheral clocks in humans. The central clock is in suprachiasmatic nucleus. The peripheral clocks are located in almost all the cells, liver, the heart, the skeletal muscles. Chronobiology is a new area of research, timing the circadian rhythm to chemotherapy, risk for cancer, risk for various heart diseases. The suprachiasmatic nucleus as the master clock awaiting cues from sunlight. So we started by quoting the Bible, and God said, "Let there be light." There was light. In Islam, during prayer time, we always remember the supreme power and the early morning sunlight as a cue that it's time to think about the creator of this universe. What about the Hindu religion? The Hindu religion has the famous Gayatri mantra, Om Bhurtava Swaha Tat Savidur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Bhargo Devasya, the rising sun, is being worshipped. So three major religions have accepted the concept that your life is closely tied to the power of the rising sun. Whether you are a plant or a flower or an insect or an animal or a mammal or human being, we are all bound by this circadian rhythm given to us by sun. And that's probably the basic concept of Vasudhaiva Kudumbagam, that we all belong to one and the same family. And I conclude by remembering Dr. Balaraman sir, who led such a rich life, enjoying his academia, enjoying the gardening, enjoying the music, acting, histrionics, science, coordination, public policy. And he has now departed from this planet. And as a tribute to this great man who loved everything in life and led such a rich life, I submit this review of the Nobel Prize in Medicine 2017. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. We request the chairperson to kindly hand over the memento to Dr. M.V. Pillai, sir.